I'm Matt McClure, and this is Currents. Laboring with dignity. We'll take you to a timely discussion on the theology of work.
I think everywhere there's an attempt to undermine the right of workers to organize. That has to be at least countered with indicating to Catholics what clear papal teaching is.
Plus, a little sacrifice can go a long way toward helping those in need this Lent. It's Operation Rice Bowl 2011. And it's not Iraq, Afghanistan, or Libya. The next battleground for war may just surprise you.
We're going to turn our attention to a less noticed aspect of war. War that is being caused by the increasing shortage of water in the world.
Well, good evening. Thanks so much for joining us. Is this a sign of the times? The governor of Maine has ordered a mural dedicated to workers taken down from the Department of Labor building. According to one report, Governor Paul LePage says that he ordered the removal because the images in the mural were not in keeping with the Maine Labor Department's pro-business goals. The mural included depictions of a 1937 strike and an image of Rosie the Riveter, the iconic symbol of American women who worked in factories during World War II. Now, the artist says that the work was not meant to be political, but rather a depiction of Maine's labor history. Well, this past weekend, Catholic bishops from around the country weighed in on labor, its history, and the theology of work at a conference at St. John's University's School of Law. We sent our cameras to check it out.
Work is so central to our nation, our economy, individual families, and individual dignity. It's a vital part of our mission as a law school, as a university, and as a Catholic university to help bring all those pieces together. Catholic social thought began more than 100 years ago in Rerum Novarum with concern about work and about the role of work in the world and the role of work in the creation of the human person.
Historically, the church and unions have been closely tied together, and as unionization has declined dramatically over the past 30 years. That seems to have faded, but a lot of the bishops have come today to say, no, it hasn't. We're still stand behind unions and stand behind the dignity of workers.
This is a time of a great deal of social and historic ferment, so I think everywhere there's an attempt to undermine the right of workers to organize. That has to be at least countered with indicating to Catholics what clear papal teaching is.
From Leo XIII's Rerum Novarum to Benedict XVI's Caritas in Veritate, there was only one focus, the central image, the human person in all his or her dignity.
Union divides are ultimately along political lines. So given the status of the Wisconsin government and the Ohio government and among others, Indiana and Illinois, it's unsurprising what's going on. However, it's definitely exciting how labor is protesting and giving themselves a voice despite what's going on to ultimately quiet their voice.
When it comes down to specific policy kinds of things, what you face as a pastor is that you've got Catholic people really on quite opposite ends of that in your own diocese and your own parishes.
The social question is how we come to understand the common good. That's the social question. How can we make the world more human? How can we make work more human? When we look at immigration, if we want to see it as a problem, is in the workplace. It's not at the border. The fact of the matter is they're working, contributing to our society, and we've kind of looked the other way because we need their labor and we let them come. Clearly, we've got to look at the value of work as immigrants give work in our society.
The dignity of workers and those who are without documents is clearly a problem. We see that they're at the bottom of the ladder. They certainly have to experience discrimination.
Other countries recognize undocumented workers as some kind of contractual right. In this country, we pretend they don't exist. We kind of turn our blind eye to them. They have no rights here, even though they take up a very large portion of our workforce.
Just take take, for example, a workman's compensation. If someone is injured on the job and they're undocumented, they have a very hard time of collecting anything. So that's the indignity, that's the injustice that we're trying to change. If they are working, if they can work, and if they're contributing, they should have the rights that other workers have.
We're talking about deep abstract issues, theology of work, dignity of workers, but also eminently practical. At the end of the day, these problems are problems that need to be solved by smart people working together. And I think as a Catholic law school, we're well positioned to play an important role in that dialogue.
Well, stay tuned. There's much more currents ahead. An explosion rips through the quiet in Jerusalem. We'll have that story and the rest of the day's headlines next. Welcome back to Currents. I'm Matt McClure. Coming up later, conflict rages overseas, but one group is looking for other answers. First, though, let's have a look at today's headlines. Well, at least one person was killed. More than 50 others were injured during a bus explosion in Jerusalem today. The blast came just as the evening rush hour began. A spokesman for Israel's emergency services says it happened in a very crowded area. Jerusalem's mayor condemned what he called the cowardly terrorist attack. So far, no one has claimed responsibility. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu delayed a trip to Moscow to consult with security officials on the incident. Well, turning now to Libya, where the head of that country's Catholics is renewing his call for an end to fighting. Bishop Giovanni Innocenzo Martinelli asked that all sides use diplomatic means to reach a solution, suggesting the possibility that African leaders get involved. Martinelli spoke with the Vatican news agency Fides. He said Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi will not give up, and that could result in a lengthy crisis. Well, meantime, Malaysia's government reversed a controversial decision about the distribution of Bibles there. Last week, the government agreed to release the more than 35,000 Bibles it had seized. The Bibles were going to be stamped with a government seal, a serial number, and the words "For Christianity." Why, you may ask? Well, the Bibles contain the word Allah to refer to God, but use of that word in non-Muslim texts is prohibited in Malaysia. The government has agreed to release the Bibles without the government seal and serial number, but they will still be stamped with the words "For Christianity." Well, turning now to Switzerland, the Vatican's permanent representative to the United Nations in Geneva says people who oppose same-sex relationships are under attack. In a statement to the UN's Human Rights Council, Archbishop Silvano Tomasi says that when people express their moral beliefs in opposition to same-sex relationships, they're stigmatized, vilified, and even prosecuted. He says such attacks are a violation of fundamental human rights and should not be tolerated. Well, back here in the U.S., new research shows some surprising numbers when it comes to how Catholics feel about same-sex relationships. A new report from Public Religion Research Institute shows 74% of the country's Catholics support recognition, legal recognition of homosexual relationships. 43% of all Catholics support same-sex marriage, while 31% support civil unions. Support for such partnerships drops among Catholics who attend Mass at least once a week. Now, in a separate poll released last week from Washington Post and ABC News, 62% of Catholics thought same-sex marriage should be legal. The critics, though, questioning that poll, which asked respondents if it should be legal or illegal for same-sex couples to marry. Now, the president of the National Organization for Marriage says that the term illegal could be taken to mean that violators would be arrested. That's a penalty he says most Americans would consider harsh. The Catholic Church has repeatedly affirmed its opposition to same-sex marriage. Well, legislation that requires women to wait 72 hours before having an abortion will soon be the law of the land in South Dakota. Governor Dennis Dugard signed the law yesterday, on Tuesday. It also requires women to receive counseling at a pregnancy help center. Governor Dugard says he hopes women considering abortions will use the 3-day period to make good choices. The law is scheduled to take effect July 1st. Well, from Germany, the cabinet there has approved legislation that would extend the statute of limitations for sexual abuse of minors. The law would give adults 30 years from the time of the alleged abuse to take legal action. Current law gives Germans only 3 years to take action. The new law still needs the approval of Germany's parliament, though, and reports say the legislation came as a result of last year's sexual abuse crisis in Germany, in which priests there were accused in more than 50 cases. Well, at the end of his trip to Latin America, President Obama observed a moment of silence before the tomb of the late Archbishop Oscar Romero in El Salvador today. Romero, whose cause for sainthood is ongoing, spoke out against repression by El Salvador's army. He was shot and killed in 1980 while celebrating a mass in a hospital chapel. Tomorrow is the 31st anniversary of his death. Obama called Romero an inspiration. Well, turning now to Cuba, where the final 2 jailed dissidents have been set free. The 2 men were among 75 people arrested there back in 2003. Their releases were brokered last year during talks between Cuba's government and the Catholic Church. Well, it is a big premiere for the highly anticipated film There Be Dragons. We get details from Rome Reports.
The director Roland Joffe traveled to Rome to present his film on St. Jose Maria Escriva at the Vatican. The film takes place during the Spanish Civil War, a story of jealousy, forgiveness, and a war that has a defining role for St. Jose Maria.
He said that you didn't only find God in church, you found God in everyday life. And I took that very seriously. I thought it was a rather wonderful thing. But what happens if everyday life is a civil war? Where's God in a civil war?
25 years after his acclaimed film The Mission, Roland Joffe gambled on a new story of redemption of 2 men with completely different characters.
I would say this is a story for every human being who feels, who thinks, who has a family, who feels ideologically bound, who feels angry, who feels the need for revenge, or who feels love, or wants love, or needs love, or wants to find love. This movie is for them, I think.
Among those in attendance were those who knew St. Jose Maria before he died in 1975. There Be Dragons is a movie for Catholics and non-Catholics alike that doesn't seek to change any opinions on the conflict of the war. It will be released in theaters on March 25th in Spain and May 6th in the United States.
And finally, Hollywood is mourning the death of a big screen legend. Elizabeth Taylor died today from congestive heart failure. She was 79 years old. Known for her roles in such classics as Cleopatra, Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, and National Velvet, Taylor won the Best Actress Oscar twice for her performances in Butterfield 8 and Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. She was married 8 times, and according to one biography, she reportedly considered converting to Catholicism during her engagement to socialite Nikki Hilton, who was Catholic. Well, stay tuned. There's much more currents ahead. When we return, Catholics are doing their part this Lent to help put food on the table for those in need around the world. We'll show you how you can help. Welcome back. So, what did you have for breakfast this morning? Well, as for me, I had a cereal bar and some orange juice myself. And you know, when you give it a little bit of thought, most of us probably don't have to think too much about where our next meal is coming from. Even in these difficult economic times, we still live in one of the wealthiest countries on earth. But still, there are those among us who are suffering and who do wake up every morning wondering if they'll even be able to have a meal at all, both here in the U.S. and in other much poorer countries around the world. Each Lenten season, Catholic Relief Services encourages the faithful to pitch in and help those in need through prayer, also through fasting and financial contributions. It's called Operation Rice Bowl, and joining me now to talk more about it is Anne-Marie Bonner with Catholic Relief Services. Anne-Marie, thanks so much for taking some time out for us. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on, Matt.
No problem at all. Now, for those viewers out there who might not be familiar with Operation Rice Bowl, I know it's been around for a while, but maybe there are those out there who aren't so familiar with it still, even to this day. Explain to us exactly what Operation Rice Bowl is and what you guys do.
Absolutely. Operation Rice Bowl is the official Lenten program of Catholic Relief Services. And since its beginning in 1975, it's really become a tradition for the Catholic community here in the United States. As you said, there are 4 components to the program, which are prayer, fasting, learning, and giving. And so throughout the course of Lent, we pray with our families and faith communities, fast in solidarity with those who hunger, learn about our global community and the challenges of poverty around the world, and give sacrificial contributions to those in need.
Right. Well, and there are, I know, as I was looking at the website earlier, there are a lot of resources available out there for parishes and schools as well that want to take part in that on the website. And as I was looking through those, there are several countries that benefit from this. Tell me a little bit about exactly where sort of the emphasis is in some of these poorer countries. I know Haiti is one that's gotten a lot of focus from you guys.
Yes, it has. And each year, Operation Rice Bowl chooses 5 countries where CRS works to feature and 1 U.S. diocese. And so this year, the featured countries are Haiti, Indonesia, Senegal, Honduras, and Kenya. And the featured diocese is the Archdiocese of Chicago here in the United States. Contributions from Operation Rice Bowl support many countries around the world, and we've chosen these 5 to highlight. But some of the work that CRS does is in the sector of agriculture, water and sanitation, microfinance, education, mother and child health. And these are some of the ways that CRS reaches out to our beneficiaries around the world and supports them and helps them improve the economic security and food security of their families.
Well, it's sounds like you guys are doing a great deal of work there, and I think when people contribute to these sorts of things, obviously they want to know exactly where the money is going. When people give, how much of their money actually does go directly to help?
That's a great question, and Catholic Relief Services really strives to make sure that the vast majority of contributions received from people in the United States does go to support its programs around the world, and so it's generally around 93-94% of all contributions that are received at Catholic Relief Services do support our work around the world.
Oh, that's amazing. That's a very nice ratio there. That's good to hear. Now, I was talking a little bit, just a moment ago, about those resources that I saw online. Tell us a little bit more about some of the resources that are available for parishes as they are taking part, and for people, just the laity, folks who might want to find out more about CRS and about Operation Rice Bowl 2011.
Absolutely. Well, the 2 central pieces of the program are the cardboard rice bowl itself, which is a tangible reminder of the struggles that people around the world experience when trying to secure food for their families, and then the Lenten calendar, which includes daily reflections for the course of Lent, as well as recipes from the featured countries and stories from some of our beneficiaries around the world. And using these materials, participants are able to learn about our brothers and sisters in need around the world, and then take simple but significant actions to make a difference in their lives.
All right. Well, Anne-Marie Bonner with Catholic Relief Services and Operation Rice Bowl, thanks so much. We'll link folks up on our website to your website, and so they can see some of those resources and find out more ways that they can help CRS, not only through Lent, but throughout the year. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you very much, Matt.
All right, and stay tuned. There's much more Currents coming up. Coming up, clean water. It's something we probably take for granted in this country, but could it lead to war in other parts of the world?
If you don't have enough to eat, you can last for a while, but in a very short period of time, if there's no water, people die. So we're really concerned to get a handle on this. Why is this happening, and what do we need to do about it?
Well, finally tonight, Tuesday was World Water Day, and it led us to ask the question, when is the last time you remember being grateful for clean water? Was it when you washed your hair this morning? Maybe when you pulled a bottle of water off of your grocery shelf? Or maybe as you washed your dishes after dinner? Well, unless you live in the thirsty deserts of sub-Saharan Africa, or you make your home near any of the disease-plagued rivers around the globe, chances are you take clean water for granted every day. While we all know that water is an essential part of life, what you may not know is that global water consumption has tripled, and much of the world does not have access to clean, safe water. And that reality is setting the stage for disputes and even war over this most necessary of resources. A few months back, we took our cameras to St. Francis College as Pax Christi hosted a talk on water and the potential for it to become a new battleground.
As people who long for peace, we come together very often to study the causes of war and how perhaps we could stop it. This afternoon, we're going to turn our attention to a less noticed aspect of war. War that is being caused by the increasing shortage of water in the world. I'll give you an example. In June, there was an article in the New York Times that said that India is building a dam on a river in Kashmir to generate more electricity, but that river then flows into Pakistan, and that they need the water to irrigate their fields, and that they've already said that if India cuts down on their water, there will be a nuclear war. So, and this is happening, there's increasing tension between Egypt and other countries on the Nile, like Ethiopia and Tanzania and Uganda. Because, you know, water, if you don't have water, you die. If you don't have enough to eat, you can last for a while. But in a very short period of time, if there's no water, people die. So we're really concerned to get a handle on this. Why is this happening, and what do we need to do about it? North Americans, us, use 6 times as much water per year as Africans. The world uses 20 to 25% of its fresh water to manufacture stuff. Pollutants and untreated sewage kills waterways around the world. Increasingly, there are predictions by experts of armed conflicts over the decreasing supply of water around the world, not just corporations buying it up, but people going to war over it.
This is not just a fad, it's not just a secular movement, it is something that reflects back on our faith and our duty to really respect this gift that God has given us. And in that, water is, obviously part of it.
By 2025, 1.8 billion people will be in regions with absolute water scarcity. There just won't be any. We can do a lot of things. One thing, we have to communicate to the government that there need to be changes. For example, right now this thing going on called fracking, we're so wild for carbon-based fuels that we're drilling for natural gas up in the Marcellus Shale. And it means that they're cutting through shale, and then the gas is getting into the groundwater. But people want the gas so much that they don't really care. Or water bottles, when we put them into the landfill, they do all kinds of terrible things to the environment, which affects the water. People buy 3 water bottles a day, the average person. And then we need to contribute more to places like Africa where they don't have enough water. This is very important for Christians and for Catholics. Jesus said he was the water of life. There's no water, it's going to be pretty hard for Christians to have life, or anybody else for that matter. So I'm hoping that we'll start to get the word out. Everybody knows, well, our members all know, say nuclear weapons are a problem, but now we need people to know that the water shortage is a problem too.
So many things you don't think about, and I think we do take that resource for granted. I know, every time I turn on the faucet, I expect it to be there, and that's just not the case everywhere. Well, that is all for this edition of Currents. Make sure and join us tomorrow as we visit an exhibit on an altar. But stay tuned, because coming up tonight at 9 o'clock here on NET, it's said that whoever possesses the spear of Christ holds the fate of the world in their hands. A documentary reveals the true nature of this sacred, mysterious artifact. That is tonight at 9 o'clock right here on NET. Until then, be sure to check us out online over at currentsny.net. We're also on Facebook and on Twitter. All over the World Wide Web we are. For all of us here at Currents, I'm Matt McClure. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a great night.